praying to get really sick this morning. I said to Mary, when we were talking, I said, the readings this morning are just so uplifting. But it is good. There is always something in there for us, I pray, with God's help. We hear this morning, you cannot serve God and wealth. I also love the collect. Grant us, Lord, not to be anxious about earthly things, but to love things heavenly. Jesus tells a parable today that is hard to understand in some ways because in some ways it speaks to all of us and yet makes us very uncomfortable. And of course it's supposed to make us uncomfortable, so if we're all uncomfortable, the good news is we're all present. When we hear about this man that has the owner and then the manager, and the manager's been accused of some things, and we don't hear anywhere in here that the manager says he didn't do it, or maybe the accusations were wrong. He's just trying to figure out how he's going to land on his feet when he gets fired. And it is very easy to, demonize the whole story. Hence the wanting to be sick this morning, right? It is, how is it that you turn this around? I was remembering when I was a kid, I know this is hard to imagine, that my parents had gone out. They did this whole thing about going out every Saturday. It's very cute now that I think back about it. And my brothers and I were all into sports and stuff, and I just remember this tennis ball going right through the window. Yeah. And there was no doubt about the fact that I'd hit the ball and it had gone through the window and it had broken. Was my first response to just admit it? Thank you, Jacob. And to just ask forgiveness. My first response was, how many ways could I cover up this disaster? I cleaned everything up and I got everything done, my brother's howling. Just lucky it wasn't their football, but of course it was my tennis ball. And so we're doing this, and then I realized there's no getting out of this. So I resort to what I've used all my life. Words. And I wrote my mother a letter. Now, I've spent a lot of money in therapy healing from my mother's foibles. This is priceless. This had nothing to do with her. She was absolutely right. So, dear Mom, you are the best mother in the entire world. I found this after she died. God love her, she'd saved it. You are the best mother in the whole world, and I know you are going to understand. Now, any of you that know me can completely imagine me doing this, right? And I went and I laid it right on her pillow. I got up in the morning and clearly nothing awful happened because I don't remember anything else about the story except that cleaning up writing this letter, professing my love for her and her devotion to me, which was real, to her credit. Now, this manager, let's just for a minute imagine that he was trying to figure out how to land on his feet. That he was trying to figure out, okay, we don't know what his life was like. We don't know if he was in survival mode. We don't know what was going on. We can drive through or walk through Dover on a beautiful day and see someone and think, ugh. We don't know what their story is. We have no idea. But this guy's going to land on his feet. And there's something about survival that I still admire. I think we should do it according to the law. And I think sometimes you can, lag. But there is something about that gift of desperation that has saved many of us day in and day out. But how do we do it? I wonder if the gospel this morning Isn't Jesus trying to tell us, what would it be like if we used that same survival instinct? What would it be like if we used that same resilience and creativity and ingenuity to talk about God, instead of just trying to land on our feet? How is it that if we automatically had something, that we did something, that automatically something happened, that instead of trying to squirm our way out of it, we were to imagine what God would be calling us to do? Because we know that with God's grace, we are forgiven over and over again. Now, the wealthy man is no saint either. Because the wealthy man is like, nice job. It's like one thief knows another thief. It's like, yeah, now I really respect you. But we don't know the story. We, again, don't know the story. But again, let us come back to asking those questions about how is it that we could imagine that when we are in a bind that God is there for us, and how would it turn it around? How is it that you can use those same gifts or those same skills to be able to advocate and think about God? Just imagine. You can't serve wealth and God at the same time. It doesn't say you can't be wealthy and you can't love God. It says you can't serve. That's a difference. Because it's who we serve, who we give thanks for. We all know people that have, all people in the world, no matter what you think is a good thing, there are philanthropists that do wonderful things. We can imagine that we can serve a higher purpose. I walked last night. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but anyway, we were on our way home and it was late, and we used the excuse that there was no power on our street, because there wasn't. So we called Five Guys to get cheeseburgers. Which is really not the way I'm trying to live right now, but I have all these reasons. So I go in, and I'm waiting, and they drive in. Sue's here, Sue's here, Sue's here. Which is hysterical. It makes me laugh every time I do it, which means I might have done it once before. And so I walk in, and this guy's standing there ahead of me, and he goes, "You here from Uber Eats?" I went, "No." And he goes, "How about, what's that other one? There's another one."
DoorDash.
Thank you. DoorDash. I said, "No, I'm just here for myself." He goes, "You don't want to be exploited by me and to have me bring you your food?" And I went, "I was just on my way home, just being lazy." He goes, "Well, I don't blame you. He goes, people pay." I said, but if somebody's getting DoorDash, maybe we don't need to be mean to them. Maybe they already know they're paying for it, and maybe they wanted to have it delivered to their house. Well, I suppose that's true," he says. And so I'm really trying to avoid the rest of this conversation. Because I was hoping they had already booked my price. And I'm looking at my phone, he goes, "What I really need is a new job." And I said, I get that. Here you go. He goes, "Yeah, I need a job with purpose." And I said, "Well, good for you." He goes, "This is just a stopgap." Like, well, see, so it's not a bad thing. Somebody's going to get their burger, and you're going to... Well, I suppose that's a way to look at it. And at that point, he didn't want to talk to me anymore, which was great. He wasn't loving what he was doing. I don't think DoorDash is evil. I don't think I'm great because I happen to be lazy and went old school and picked up my own food. We don't know what anybody else's life is like. We don't know what their day is. We don't know what's causing them to make a particular action. I have a young family that lives across the street from me, and I can always tell when these three little children children, all under the age of 6, have driven their mother crazy because DoorDash arrives at their door. She doesn't want to put them all in the car. We don't know. But what we know is what we serve is God. We know that where we look for our help and our healing, even when we eat Five Guys, is God. We know that we can name that maybe this is a stopgap, that I don't know, this is not like this. But this guy was not having a great night. Maybe the question we really need to ask ourselves is, what do we love? What do we love? What really matters? Because our actions and our words matter. You've heard me say it a million times, and I think that in this time we live in, it is so much more true than it's ever been. Before we just ban, what do we love? What do we care about? Maybe the very best thing we can do is be quiet, or maybe we can say something that's of value. We don't know. But what do we love? Because that's what's really important. This is a poem by Carrie Newcomer. Perhaps the place to start is not to ask, what can I do? But first ask, what do I love? Begin from there where the heart expands, not where it needs to be closed and protected. Where you know for sure what actually matters. Because it is love, always love, that keeps pointing us in the right direction. It illuminates us, the path, even if not always clear. Love will point the way. So as we wonder about the manager and the boss, we wonder about wealth and worship, we wonder about who we are, I leave us today with the question, what do you love? And how can you, in healthy, clear, kind, and compassionate ways, live into that, one little bit at a time? Because that will spread. It always has.